21 of the City of Lincoln Park Council to order at 6:30. If everyone would please rise where you're at and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Carrie, if we could have roll call, please.
Certainly. Councilpersons Dupre? Here. Higgins? He's still connecting to the audio.
Oh, okay.
Councilman Kelsey?
Here.
Ross? Here. Salcido?
Here.
Tobin? And Mayor Carnes?
Here.
Brian's muted.
Okay, and we have our city attorney with us also, and Mr. Kazan, and the chief of police that is going to be joining us shortly. I mean, he's with us now, apparently. All right, I don't have my agenda with me because my printer's done, but I think the first thing is going straight into the alley maintenance order. All right. So with this, and I've been thinking about this going in, I'm going to jump to James doing a presentation here in just a second. But I want to thank the people that are out there that are adjacent to alleys that have been maintaining them for all along. The vast majority of those that butt up to the alley take care of that, and we appreciate that. I wanted to get that straight going in. And then the next thing that we should be looking at also is we should be vacating these alleys where possible. I mean, there are still people that have garages that open up into an alley, and you need to be able to give that person that access, but that needs to be done. But in going in, this is something that I think the alleys are our property, our responsibility, and that we should do something about those, and that's why we're going into this. So we'll get discussion going after James's presentation. So James, are you ready for that?
Yes, sir. I'm going to start sharing my screen here.
Okay.
And I think you guys should all see that. If anybody's having any trouble, please don't hesitate to stop me here. So to start kind of getting the scope here, the city still actually has over 300 alleys. This includes both commercial alleys and residential. And just a quick background for those who aren't aware, residential alleys typically serve the purpose to access rear garages in neighborhoods that have narrow lots. Also, they can benefit the city when it comes to access for utilities in those neighborhoods. That's where you see a lot of the power lines. That's where you have a lot of sewer pipes. And then commercial alleys are good for maybe for the businesses who need to have deliveries, have garbage collection, place to have a dumpster just off the alley. This summer especially, it seems we received a significant increase in complaints regarding alleys. Typically, there are three major categories: either litter in the alleys, the overgrowth of vegetation, or the general structural integrity of the alley. The alley infrastructure is made up of either unimproved surface, gravel, dirt, roughly. Some are improved with pavement. Underneath most of them, there is some sort of sewer infrastructure as well. Quick example of some litter in alleys. This seems to be a bigger issue in the commercial areas, specifically off of Dix, off of Southfield, off of 4th Street, where we see the majority of these. Kind of due to the adjacent streets, you get a lot of the litter that blows in, kind of wind tunnels that are created by traffic and all of that. The alleys seem to be a good spot. They all have fences at the back. fences, or sometimes they've got the brick walls that separate them from the adjacent properties. Generally, the biggest one we've been receiving this year has been the overgrowth in the alleys. And here's an example of one. And this is where grasses are growing on the travel surface. This is where weed trees form along the edge of the alleys, either on the alley side of the fence or on the neighboring property side of the fence. They can grow all over the place if we let them get away. Failing infrastructure, this is pretty simple. This is where you see concrete sinking, concrete completely fail, and it makes it very difficult to get through. So, simply put, the responsibility for the alley is based on charter, gives the responsibility basically to the city through the superintendent of public works, who shall manage and have charge, supervision, and control of the construction, improvement, repair, and maintenance of streets, sidewalks, and alleys. However, neighboring properties are also responsible. They can't have buildings, fences, anything, any type of vegetation extend into or encroach into any alley, and they can be cited for that. The one spot that we've had the most trouble with is alley upkeep as far as the vegetation inside the alley. Code 67607 gives responsibility to the adjacent property owners for trash, debris, excessive snow and ice, or anything that can impede pedestrian travel through an alley. But we've gotten instruction from Judge Clifton that because of the charter provision, we can't enforce this ordinance. So, just kind of...
Question, James.
Yes.
Is that a recent opinion, or has that been in place for a couple of years?
I'm not sure when originally. At some point, I believe we had a ticket thrown out in which we had cited the property owner and actually sent our contractor out to clean up the alley, and that ticket was waived. So in essence, the city was financially responsible for maintaining the alley in that case. And Chief Waters has recently confirmed with Judge Clifton that tickets written for alleys under that ordinance are unenforceable.
Okay.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So essentially, with it falling under the city, we have to figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to pay for it. So funding alley maintenance is tough because the costs to maintain alleys are something that would have to be allocated in the general fund. We're hoping maybe we could squeeze some of this into our road funding through Act 51. Unfortunately, we did confirm with MDOT that we cannot use Act 51 money for alley maintenance. And then, of course, our other major fund is water and sewer, and water and sewer funds are for water and sewer improvements. All of our funds are pretty well stressed, but the general fund is one with the greatest amount of stress as far as having extra money to spend on anything. Just kind of since the year 2007, we've lost roughly $2.5 million a year in state revenue sharing. The city's taxable value has dropped from $781 million down to $601 million. And actually, we're up from the low point in 2012, which was $583 million. So I put in here essentially for every mill that we levy, every mill on our taxes, we collect $180,000 less for that mill than we did in 2007. This is all at the same time as costs for insurance have continued to increase, labor costs continue to increase, costs for materials increase. So while inflation is making our costs go up, our tax revenue is actually seeing the opposite effect. So just, and where does some of this money go? Legacy costs make up a significant amount. 31% of our general fund expenses are in the general fund here due to legacy costs. Police and fire make up another 35% of these of the general fund costs. We do have that police and fire millage, which contributes about a quarter of these costs. And then we also have mandated functions of government, assessing, collecting taxes, maintaining records, and then just trying to do other things like Parks and Rec and the community center. There's another 21% of our general fund. Another 6% of our general fund goes to court expenses. So the last 7% that we have in the general fund go to the building department and the other administrative departments. There's not a whole lot of room there. So in order to be able to fund alley maintenance, we have to look at two options. Either we decrease other expenditures, which I just kind of went through. It's not going to be easy. Or perhaps we have to look at some kind of increase in revenue. Again, our options are limited. We could potentially do a Headley override amendment to restore back to our 20 mills. That really is only another $1.5 million about on what we're already collecting. Beyond that, the only other thing we can potentially do as far as the millage goes is looking at funding our police and fire pensions through the Public Act 345 pension millage, which I know we have tried it in the city in the past. But whatever we do on the revenue side will require some kind of affirmative vote of electors. Just kind of summing this up, the issues that we're having in alleys are similar to other issues we have across the city right now. Things like park maintenance, traffic enforcement, condition of city buildings. It's really a matter of priorities and available funding. So that's just kind of a good overview for you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen unless you guys have anything you want to look at.
I'm going to jump into a couple things here and then open it up to everyone else. Now, we're at a position where we got money to recoup some of the losses that we had from the federal government for over the 2 years. So I imagine that we have some funds that are available from there. And what I would like to see is an all-out attack on the alleys that we have and do just send out for bid for a massive cleanup. And just go and just take care of everything that goes through as far as vegetation would go. And then after you have the vegetation down, I would then include this into our grass cutting contract. And with the thing that it would be maintained for twice a year or something similar to that. But, spring and fall go through and cut it down. Because the main reason is this isn't stuff that has accumulated just in the past year. This is years of growth. And this goes back to our emergency management. I don't know why it was that we stopped doing it, because of the cost, the manpower, whatever else. It is what it is right now, and it is a mess. So we take care of the vegetation, and then I think that we could, with that initial outlay, cover the cost through just a regular maintenance part that we can include with our grass cutting thing. Second thing that we need to do is go through and get rid of the trash that's there. And there is a ton of it. There's couches, there's debris, we need to get this cleaned up. That would be the second aspect of it. The third thing would be that grass, the garbage, and then the failing infrastructure we have to take care of. Either that or close the alleys. We cannot have people going down, and it's the way that the situation is. So that would be the third thing. There's ways of helping out and doing additional things. There's adoptive road program in various areas. We could have an adopt an alley, and if people in the neighborhood and got the word, and twice a month they could go out and take care of that, and we give them a little sign that says alley maintained by such and such. That's a possibility, but in the end this must be done. I mean, we have some funds, even if it costs more on the water bill, and we take some of that money that, the 14 million that we had set aside for that, and we put it into getting it cleaned. This is terrible for the city. It really is. It is nasty, and it needs to be taken care of. So, that's me. Who else would like to be heard? Yes, go ahead.
I also take time off because I've gone through a lot of the alleys. We've got some alleys out there that no longer have garages backed up onto them with doors that we could be closing. And that would be a help and get it off the, something we gotta take care of.
Yes, you were logging on, sir. I said at the first to examine the alleys that we have and vacate where possible. That would be something that the assessor could help us with.
If I may, Mayor, we have started looking at that.
Okay.
As part of a lot of the preparation for this. And before this meeting, we had been starting to put together some of this work, so.
I know that they were talking about at Dix and Emmons, because there's virtually no access to the area for anybody, and it's hard to get in there and clean. But go ahead, Councilman Higgins. What do you have more, sir?
Basically what you were saying earlier, it's gotten to be an emergency situation where we've gotta take care of it, and wherever we have to find the funds, we gotta find it.
It's our responsibility. We need to get it done.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was looking at the map, James, that you gave us, the alley map, and when I overlap that with the CDBG map, there's a lot of overlap there. Is there help, do you think, from CDBG, at least for the infrastructure part of it?
So that would be a question for Doreen. But I do think that's a potential area. But again, then with CDBG, we've got to figure out what we're not going to do in that program as well, right? This just comes down to there's so much revenue. At some point, we have to figure out what not to do somewhere. But I do think CDBG could be used for some of this. The only issue I could see is some of the residential alleys are specifically only serving those residences. There might be some verification we'd have to do, but it's definitely a good thing to look into.
Okay, but the other problem that I have is, I listened carefully to what Mr. Zelenak said at our council meeting when he gave this little overview on his opinion, and that caused me to do my own digging, my own research. So this is what I found. In the charter, chapter 6, it's called Powers of City and Council. And under section 1, that is titled Ordinance Authorized to Exercise Powers. Okay? So it says, in addition to all other powers in this charter granted, the city shall have the general powers and authority granted in this chapter, and the council shall pass such ordinances and resolutions as it shall deem expedient in order to exercise such powers. And it's my opinion that the ordinance stands just by reading that. So I'd like to know what Mr. Zelenak thinks. I mean, the charter was written, back in 1925? So we know that a lot of things have changed since 1925. And I think our forefathers in their wisdom chose the right language in exercising ordinance amendments or ordinances. So if Mr. Zelenak could, I would like to know what Mr. Zelenak thinks about that.
Mr. Zelenak, do you have an answer for us, sir? Go ahead.
Well, the question would be, does the city council have the power under the charter to enact ordinances and to change ordinances in conformance with the Home Rule Act and the enabling legislation that set up municipalities? The answer is yes, they do. And you can, quite frankly, unless it violates either state or federal statute, pass any ordinance requiring any type of performance or other liability. You can't encroach on private property, but you have the right to pass an ordinance requiring individuals to maintain their part of the alley, to maintain the alley, and assume the responsibility for the city. But remember, ordinances are to enforce the law and just set up standards, and that would generally go to individuals and residents and businesses in the community. So the question is, if that's how I understand the Councilwoman's question, yes, they acted properly under the Home Rule Act, under the charter of the city, and in adopting ordinances, council is acting properly.
So, but with that opinion, then it goes against what the judge is ruling then.
Well, the judge ruled one time, am I not mistaken, that the city couldn't put the power on someone else? We had a judge who ruled years ago that you could keep a pot-bellied pig, and he was appealed, and the Court of Appeals said he was wrong. You can't keep a pot-bellied pig.
Yes, but the chief of police has gone to the judge since the last meeting, and he has confirmed that that's what his opinion is.
Well, the chief judge indicates that's still his opinion?
Yes. Is that correct, chief?
Yes, sir. I just talked to Judge Clifton last Wednesday on the 8th, explained to him the whole situation, and in his opinion is that the charter cannot, the ordinance does not trump the charter, and until the charter is changed, we can't enforce that. And he explained to me that if any violations that we issued would be dismissed because of the charter.
You, Mr. Mayor, Chief of Police, the charter gives council the authority to take control of streets and alleys. Does it require this city to go and cut down trees and weeds in alleys? My answer is it doesn't. It's a very specious grant of authority, which is straight from the Home Rule Act and the state enabling legislation. Tell me if I'm incorrect, because I'm at home and I don't have the charter with me here. Am I missing something out of that charter language?
I don't think so.
All right, so I want to say this as gently and as politely as possible, because both judges are neighbors of mine, that my opinion is they're incorrect, as judges are many, many times, and if they are, you either keep writing tickets or you appeal, which one of the judges in there now did when one of his predecessors threw out his prosecution of someone owning a pot-bellied pig. You can draw your own conclusions. It's the other judge, and the circuit court and the Court of Appeals said the city was correct. You can't own a pot-bellied pig. So judges interpret. Judges are right, judges are wrong, judges make mistakes, just like we do on rare occasion.
So what would the appeal process be for those violations?
You know, write a ticket. Write a couple of tickets first, and let's take it from there. It's either you do it or you do nothing, but in the meantime, the city has to have a uniform policy, and if you can't get people to do it through niceness, and it's something emanating from their yards or that they can lay hold on to, we've got a better case than sitting against their property and they're encroaching on city property. I'm not sure. Perhaps I should have gone with the chief when we spoke with the judge. That's all I would say.
Okay, could you meet with, could you arrange that meeting?
Well, yeah, and Your Honor, I was going to before, and I apologize. I didn't realize the chief had jumped ahead, and as you know, I wasn't paying attention to details. I didn't even know we had a meeting until about an hour ago, so that's my mistake, Your Honor.
Okay. But I think...
But I certainly will. If that's council's will, I'll tell council that I don't see a problem in taking up an appeal on the interpretation of the ordinance. I don't know who's going to defend the court on their decision, because theoretically, if there's a decision, it's got to be the aggrieved party that represents them on appeal, and that would be the party we're appealing. So I don't know, I guess it would be the homeowner or someone else.
As I see this working out, and excuse me, Councilwoman Ross, I'm just going, is that we cannot wait for these tickets and appeal and everything to go through. This is an emergency situation we need to address. So we would go through and we would clean this section out, but then we would assess violations to those that had were adjacent to that, and then I guess assess part of the cost for that cleanup would be what the anticipated thing would be.
Exactly. A percentage, a pro rata share, or something in the alley. Now, I'll give one cautionary instruction, Your Honor. If there is a oak tree or weed tree growing in the middle of the alley next to the storm or sanitary sewer in the rear of the alley, which is in the traversable way, that's the city's obligation to cut that down, because you have to have it available if it's in access and it's not being vacated and it's still open as a public right of way. We have to maintain it.
Look, my goal is not to cause anyone any heartache over this, but we need to get this cleaned up. And if it's all up to us, then fine, but the ordinance that was passed several years ago says that the adjacent property owners are responsible for that. If that is garbage, then, then throw it out. We need to get the answer to that. But we can't sit and screw around with it.
You have a rule that judges will not issue advisory opinions, and that's from the Supreme Court on down. There's got to be an actual case in controversy. And chief, depending on where your officers are or the other departments, write a citation, then we have a case in controversy and we see where it goes. It's the test case. It's not just an opinion in a vacuum. And I appreciate the fact that the judge was willing to share his impressions in a vacuum. However, that's not the way actual law is written or appealed. You can't appeal his opinion. You can appeal his opinion when there's an actual case. So, Chief, if you're not going to give a warning shot that the city's going to start writing citations and that our intention is to appeal to the circuit court if he throws the citations out, that would be the biggest move you can make on the compass.
I think we should sit down with him because he's already told me he's going to throw any violation out that we give to him. So, I mean, we just need to be on the same page, and I don't think we're even reading the same book right now.
Okay, and I'm not just speaking for one person. I don't know how the rest of the council feels with that. So we'll go back to Lillian. Did you have more?
No, that was it, Your Honor. From what I read, I feel like the ordinance stands. I mean, it should, it's very short, it's one sentence, and it's pretty clear to me. And
May I interject while Councilwoman Ross is speaking? Councilwoman Ross, I agree with you. It took me many more words to say what you said eloquently in about 5 words. But the other thing that you have to remember is there are municipal lawyers and there are judges. Judges come from a certain bent. There are some municipal lawyers who work 1 or 2 years, and just look at the chart on Friday and see how long that my office has represented the city, and make your decision as to where you go. But reading one sentence, Councilwoman Ross summed it up. That's what it says, and that's what the council did. And if the judge finds that's beyond the authority, then let some judge of greater authority stick his neck out and say that we're wrong and he's right.
Thank you, Mr. Zelenak. And that's pretty much it, Your Honor. I agree that, I think it's always been, I've been here, I think 25 years. I had, my sister actually moved in long before I did in the Lincoln Park, and she's always, where she was at, she had an alley, and she kept that clean. It's just, that's what we do, right? We have responsibilities as homeowners, as residents.
And we
That's all I have, Your Honor.
and we have
Thank you.
responsibilities as a city, too. You're right. Who else wishes to be heard?
Through the chair, if I may.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I have to agree with the city attorney. I think that the test case is an excellent process to go. I think that will give the definition in the future. It won't be he said, she said. It'll be a written document, hopefully, or a written opinion, or however you want to put it. The other thing is, this particular ordinance was passed, looked at, repassed, looked at, and repassed, I don't know how many times to look at the bottom of it. So it's never got challenged, and if you look at the charter's been in since I know, like Councilwoman Ross said. And the other issue, I think, is the fact that whatever we do, we need to be consistent. And these LAs were an emergency yesterday, the day before that, the day before that, and they're still an emergency. And I think the bottom line is that if we have a plan to do them, then we must have a plan to maintain them. And as we go through looking at all the different issues we have, not only the alleys, but the other issues, is we have a funding issue. So we're going to have to be careful where we go with the money. And then I would, quite frankly, if we're going to clean them up, I want to see where the money's going to come to maintain them. Because if you're not going to maintain the alleys, cleaning them up once a year or twice a year is not going to do anybody any good. And I think that's the biggest issue, I think, is sometimes the cleanup is not too bad, it's the maintenance, which obviously why we're parking here right now is because we haven't maintained the alley portion, which is ours. But we also haven't enforced the alley portion, which, according to the ordinance, if you read it that way, is the residents, for a variety of reasons. And I don't want to get into that now because we talked about it before. But I would like to see the city attorney take the issue, or the test case, as he so puts it eloquently, which is exactly what it is, and take it in front of the judge and get an opinion. It's easy for somebody to say, well, I disagree, that's the way it goes. You go to the next judge, hey, I don't know why that guy said something. I'm in a different opinion. And I think that happens all the time, whether it's in lawyers or city officials or anybody. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think if we're going to have an issue, it's two issues. And the issue is the fact that the test case should go forward. And then the issue is that we do have a responsibility to take a look at the alleys and fix the potholes, the broken cement, and all that, and figure where the money's coming from, figure out who's going to do it. We already have a problem, Connor, and you're well aware of it, we all are, with the contractor we have for grass cutting now, who doesn't cut the grass the way that we would like it. And if we go out to bid, that's even across the sport just to cut the grass and trim, which we haven't been getting the way we like it. So you're talking about increasing that contract just for cutting the grass and trimming it, and now putting the issue of the alleys on top of that contract, which will be a little bit of a hefty bill to handle. That's all I got to say. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. Thank you for your time.
One thing that we should be looking at also is that ordinance was passed. Are we being fair to the residents that border up on an alley, requiring them to maintain half of it and to clean the trash and to cut the grass and over things? I mean, was council right in passing that ordinance several years ago? So what I'm asking is, is council comfortable with that and assessing what could be hundreds of dollars to the residents if we go through and those tickets are good on appeal?
My opinion, through the chair, Your Honor, is we have done that sporadically to begin with. When I first come on 8 years, I remember about Councilman Parkinson and myself going around, and we were writing or asking the ordinance officers, look at alleys that had trees or bushes coming from the other yard into them, and they were writing tickets. Now, I don't know when Chief Waters and the Chief Judge had that test case or whatever we threw out, but there was no mention then, and that was 8 years ago, Your Honor, so somebody got a ticket and paid for it back then, somewhere, to answer your question. So somebody's been, I guess, if we want to call it, penalized or given a option of fixing that failure or whatever, underneath the ordinance, Your Honor.
Yes, well, I'm asking if council is comfortable with assessing that, if they're happy with the ordinance, or should we just let it be? I mean,
Through the chair,
yes, sir, go ahead.
I would say I'm comfortable with that, as that has been our program for a long time. It's just been let go. But I also would like, why I'm approached about paying this, many of our alleys are in our DDA area, and aren't we not responsible for parking lots and alleys in the DDA area?
They're not responsible for them. I mean, they can assist and do that. The alleys that you're talking about in that area would be the municipal ones. And
Correct.
I'm sure that is something that they will take a look at and assist, and they have done in the past.
We have done some, yes. And
I mean, the main and worrisome alleys that I've seen, the ones that are the worst, are the ones that are on Southfield, east of 4th Street, all the way down to River Drive. On both sides. Some are good, but some are in just absolute terrible repair, and the debris is atrocious. But yes, I think we will meet with the DDA and get them to help out where they can.
And I also would like to add that we should be looking at other communities around us and see what they do with their alleys. I mean, all of the surrounding communities have exactly the same layout. They have some alleys just like ours. Let's see what they're doing. But I believe in most cities that the citizens are responsible.
A business abutting an alley should have the ability of accepting a delivery on that alley. That has to be accessible for that. And it's our position or responsibility to provide that. As far as the condition, it should not be to where there are major potholes. They should not be caving in. It should not be treacherous to drive down there. I mean, that is our responsibility as a city. It doesn't fall on anybody else.
As most of you know, I've been traveling and talking to a lot of business owners, and the last little bit, and you have no idea how many have asked me to get back and look at their alleys with them because can't make a delivery, or the wires are in danger because they leave everything. Alleys are huge with the big problems with the businesses too.
Okay. Then part of this going through is we're going to need to assess each alley and see what exactly we're looking at for repairs to the roadways. But I don't think that we need to wait to have the garbage taken out and to have the vegetation pushed back.
I get through the chair if I may, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
I guess we need to find a funding source that, by understanding of your comment is that instead of waiting for the test case, or the test case will take a period of time. So where do we get the funding right now, today, as we talk, Your Honor, we need to look at it. Where are we going to get that funding from?
Well, there's money that came from can't remember what the act of what it was that we received from the government that we're able to take some of the funds that were utilized for other things. So it gives us some spending leeway. I'm sure that it was promised to other places, but this is a matter of health and safety and rodents and quality of life for those people that live in that area and traverse it. So it's something that we have to get done.
Okay, through the chair, then that's fine. I just was under the understanding we couldn't take that much money from there, so that's why I asked the question.
Well,
I'm not doing it, I'm just telling.
I got you.
When James was giving his presentation, he talked about you can't do this for the, and that was even in our packet that we got, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's why I made the comment. I mean, it's great to do it, but if the law doesn't allow it, that was my question. Can we do that? If we can do that, then we can get started. But if you look at Dixon, I think somebody brought up Dixon Emmons. I live right by there. If you look at that, half of that alley is absolutely beautiful off of Emmons if you look at it. Somebody in that house that abutted that alley took care of that part, and it's great. Now, the next house is over, you could walk through it if you had a machete. But I'm just saying, some of these people, and I forgot, maybe Councilman Ross made the comment, they've been taking care of the alley, whatever, whether they thought it was their job or whatever. So hopefully, as we get through this program, depending which way we go, we can either institute that kind of understanding with the residents, or at least our understanding, if it's ours, to get it on a regular basis, so we don't get into this where we're in this situation on 0 day, and we're all talking about it doing yesterday, and it took 8 years to get here, because I've been on council 8 years, and I know we have no precedent on it. And I think if we find out this ordinance is no good, then I agree we should toss this ordinance out so there's no confusion with the charter and the ordinance. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I got.
Okay, and if you're talking about Emmons, I think those alleys there are the ones that are being looked at for vacation, or vacating, not vacation. I don't know what the proper thing is. So, who else would like to be heard?
Through the chair, Your Honor, the fact that
I think that dog wanted to be heard too.
Yeah, he got his bark in. Go ahead, Council President.
all right, I think we all can agree that the rallies are a mess and an issue, right? I made at the last council meeting, I made a statement, and our city attorney kind of said the same thing. If we have a tree growing near a sewer in the middle of an alley, that's the city's responsibility. If we have a tree hanging out of someone's backyard and it's impeding the alley, then that's the homeowner's responsibility. And I'm going to just stop right there. We have a tree service business, a contractor, maybe they can help out. I'm more concerned currently about residential or business, commercial alleys. I have 3 thorns in my side in regards to commercial alleys, and nothing's been done. All right, I got too many dumpsters. I got a dumpster with no lid. I got a dumpster with food coming out. I got an enclosed dumpster that's not proper, and I can't even fix that currently. So we need to get on this, I agree, and, I wish that we had more money, that's always seems to be a problem. No matter what we try to do in the city as a council, there's just no money, or there's no resources. So, I remember growing up in Lincoln Park back in the day where people had a garden in the alley, they maintained it. I also remember when they closed off alleys, and the residents got half of the alley each, and they take care of that now. So, somewhere along the line, a ball was dropped. So, how we fix it, we're the brain trust. And I'm really adamant about the businesses that have too many dumpsters, not enough dumpsters, or dumpsters blocking the alley. So, let's attack this again. I'm not sure if this meeting is going to fix that, but I need to be heard, that's all. And I'm going to leave it at that because I'm frustrated also. Thank you very much.
Okay, when we go through and do this, we would be working with LP Pride, obviously. And then any vegetation that is originating from the backyard going into the alley, I don't think is a problem. I think that we could still cite them without it being an issue. I think it's where the vegetation is on the property, is on the city property that is growing, and we're ordering them to clean that up is where the issue is. Is that correct, Chief, or is it also vegetation going from the backyards out in the alley that he would not authorize a violation on?
No, so if it's a tree or a bush that's growing from someone's yard into the alley, then yes, we would enforce that. That's something we can still enforce. If it's something growing down the middle of the alley, then it would be the city's responsibility. We could enforce that.
So we can take care of that part through LP Pride, and it's the from the property line out to the middle of the alley is the other part that we would have to address. I think because there's a combination of both. Second thing, I don't know that our ordinances allow for dumpsters to be in the alley. Are you aware of that, Chief, or Mr. Zelnick? Do you have that information?
I think they'd be blocking the right-of-way. Chief, would you agree if they're dumped as a dumpster in the middle of an alley or on the purpose of the alley?
Or in the alley itself, so that's what I'm looking for.
Exactly. No, that would violate. That's not the purpose of placing dumpsters.
Yeah, it would all depend on how the alley and or how far back the business is set. Some of the businesses have enough room to put one that interfere with the alley. Actually to the rear of the business, not so much in the alley, but it would all depend on where it's located, I guess.
That's the part to the east.
But yeah, they can't block the alley. They can't block traffic moving back and forth.
And so that would be another thing as we go through this. And this is something that
That would be the event price they were going to have a clear here in Detroit.
Way too much parking.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did just have one move that was on Southfield that was blocking about 2 weeks ago. They moved it for us.
Okay. I mean, we try to do that voluntarily, but we're going to need to have, on the onset of this, an assessment of all of our alleys. And this needs to be done as soon as possible, which means a drive-through and looking at and what needs to be done as we go through it. And not an estimate of it. It's somebody taking a look at that and then going through and see what needs to be done with that. Now, is that something that we would have the DPS take care of, James, or is that something that we would have our engineers take care of, or is that...
Should be able to handle that in-house.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
my concern is we already have trouble with DPS. We don't have enough people to keep things going, so if we have DPS do it, who's going to do the regular maintenance?
As far as I'm concerned, I'll go through it. And I'll go through every alley and I'll make a list of everything that needs to be done. I mean, this is something, folks, we can't fool around with. It's gone on long enough. This needs to get taken care of. It needs to be get clean. A good section of this was the responsibility of the DPS, and it got put aside. Now, I'm not saying it's from the current management. It could go back to as far as 7, 8, 9 years ago when this happened. But the ball got dropped. And we got it handed to us, and it's turned into an absolute nightmare, and it has to be taken care of. And not next month and not 3 months from now. It has to be done as soon as possible.
Through the chair, I'm sorry.
People that live adjacent to these places, that do their part, shouldn't have to put up with the vermin that associated with all this vegetation and garbage that is out there. Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't know Councilman,
Dupre, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, no, I totally agree with you, Your Honor, it's just the source is my concern, that's all. I totally agree it needs to be handled immediately.
through the chair.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I was gonna echo the same thing, is we're having problems with just getting regular stuff done, and I don't think, and I appreciate you wanting to go through it and do it, I do, but I think we need to get this done, like you say, and have somebody do it who can look at it and give us a comprehensive report so we can move forward, because then we're gonna have to look at cement contracts, so it's gonna be a lot of more entailed than just throwing some asphalt and saying, cutting some trees down and say, oh, this alley is great, because you're right, they're in a mess. And some of them are next to businesses that you gotta be careful what you do, because they have property that encroaches on the alley. So what I would say is, but again, and I said this before in this conversation, we do it the right way, the proper way, and just do it. And I don't care if we need to hire somebody to go through there. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It would be quickly, it shouldn't take that long for some company out there to give us we got 300 alleys or something like that. Then we could find out which ones we need to close, which ones people are storing boats in or cars in that are blocked off. We would find all that out by somebody going out there and maybe even taking a picture of the garage door, more concept. Then we can turn around and decide how much which ones we should close off based upon the documentation, which ones need cement work, which is another issue, or sewer work, and which ones just need to have them trimmed up and, buffed up a little bit and they look good. That would be my suggestion, Your Honor. I'm not knocking you volunteering on, that's not where I'm going with this, but I think we just need to get it done and get it going. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you take care of the low-hanging fruit here. We're not talking about the cement things. If there's cement issues, then we close the alley or we make it to where you can't go through. There's garbage in these alleys. There are couches. There's debris. There's all kinds of crap that is in there. And we can go in and get these removed so that people don't have to put up with that. Yeah, I understand that we're not going to do the sewer lines and everything currently. We're not going to make it to where we can fix everything. But there are some things that we can do now. That we can go through there, we can issue the violations for the ones that are overhanging, like the council president had said. We can take care of the dumpsters, we can take care of the trash, and we can get those sections trimmed without it being that big of a deal. I would start with the commercial alleys first, and then I would go out to the residential areas. Our initial focus needs to be on the commercial alleys, though. And going through there and checking that and getting an assessment done would take no more than a day, in my opinion.
But Chair, okay, Your Honor, that's fine. If that's what you, I'd support that if that's what you want to do.
Well, I think that's what needs to be done, but we haven't heard from everybody yet. Is there other council that wish to be heard?
Through the chair, I'm just completely on board with what you're saying. I don't think that, we should see the end of October and not have this addressed and moving forward. If we leave it like it is and we don't look at it till next spring, we're going to have an even bigger mess. And as far as the roadways and the conditions of the cement and everything else, we can't even address that until these are cleaned up. Some of them are definitely a health issue that, you don't want people out there until they're cleaned up. So I agree with everything that's being said.
I think that, yes, thank you. I think we meet with, I meet with James and we'll get a resolution or an idea of how it is that we could move with this. And we'll have the chief meet also, Chief Waters and John Kazoo, and then we'll see and develop a plan of attack with all of these that we'd present for council at the next meeting. So
Your Honor.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Please. I've already shot, and I'm cooled down a little bit. I just want to if this all could be done diplomatically, I would almost target a residential alley and have the city or whoever clean it, and then notify the residents that in an effort to clean these alleys, the city is doing its part. If you have any trees that you want to trim, because once they see that the city's cleaning, they may be more willing to clean. In regards to commercial, still be diplomatic, but if they're in a violation, by golly, give them a 15-day notice to clean that alley or their dumpster. That's all I'm trying to get across. On a couple of dumpster issues that I have, I don't want to talk about it currently, but that would be really good if I could get that taken care of tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from council?
Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I agree, the business alleys have got to be done and done as fast as possible. But with some of the residential alleys, and I'm going to refer to the ones I'm going to say by electric, on the other side of Southfield, some of those are the only way those people can park because they have to be off the street for garbage day. So we've got to look at those alleys as quick as possible. Because they're impassable and it's become a huge issue over there.
Well, I'm sorry I would argue with you, though. It's illegal to park in an alley at any
So
time.
no, you have to go through the alley to get to the parking and behind your apartment.
To get there, yes.
And two of those alleys are impassable at this point.
Okay, so if you would let the city manager know which of those alleys are impassable, and then we could make it a focus.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? All right, I'm not hearing anything. Is there any?
Getting revenue. Mayor, I just would like to reaffirm that the police chief and I will go and meet personally with the judges and attempt to reach some magnanimous compromise, not unilaterally dismissing citations, allowing us to present our legal argument to the court, which would be proper because they're interpreting incorrectly the Home Rule Act and the city charter. So if that's in your purview, we'll do that. We'll take it ourselves.
I think that's the recommendation of council to do that, and it gives them the just what our intent would be after that. But,
Your Honor?
yes, sir. Go ahead.
Can I have a report of that meeting at the next council meeting, or as soon as possible?
Well,
I'd like the public to know the answer to that, is what I'm pointing out.
Okay, well, I would think that council would get that as soon as the meeting was over, but we could, under city manager's comments, have that brought up, or my comments at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Also,
then notify people within 300 feet.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
All right. And so, James, I have you, do we have citizens on the call? We may have. So if you would open it up for citizen comment?
Mayor, I am actually not seeing any members of the public outside of city staff and mayor and council.
Okay, then, since the business of the meeting has been, so do I need a motion to adjourn this?
Need a motion.
Okay, so all right, so we have, all right. Clerk, call the roll?
Councilperson Salcido?
Yes.
Dufresne?
Yes.
Higgins?
Yes.
Kelsey?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Tobin? You're muted.
Yes.
And Mayor Carnes.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.